Welcome back, and well. Tom Lee, well-known finance strategist, is now trying to create the MicroStrategy of Ethereum. We are now seeing the rollout of Ethereum's treasury companies in what many are calling, a competition to what's going on in Bitcoin. Guys, pay attention, because now that Bitcoin is at all-time record highs, Ethereum has not even reached its all-time record high in the 2025 cycle just yet. And now we're seeing the Wall Street experts trying to front run themselves, essentially trying to front run Wall Street by getting into Ethereum before Wall Street starts to do what happened with MicroStrategy, which is going to happen. We're already seeing the ETF excitement. And in today's video, we're going to be exploring what Tom Lee is doing, what this means for Ethereum, what's happening in the rest of crypto. We're going to be talking about Ripple, Ethereum, Arbitrum, Upexi, and the ETF approvals, because there is a lot happening in crypto. And right here on the Cryptoviser podcast, we keep you on top of the latest happening in the financial world. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Give the video a free thumbs up. We upload every single day since 2018 to bring you the latest happening in the financial world. Let's start right out with what in the Tom Lee is going on here. Now, if you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you know that I am a firm believer in following Tom Lee's predictions on the market, because at least since the pandemic, he has been very accurate on calling the macro trends in the market. And now Tom Lee is joining a little known Bitcoin miner aiming to become the biggest publicly traded holder of Ethereum. And so effectively, Tom Lee has been appointed chairman of the board of directors of Bitmine Immersion Technologies. We'll get to that stock in just a few minutes here, but the company announced as well a $250 million private placement to implement a buying strategy around Ethereum, which it aims to make its primary treasury reserve asset while continuing its core Bitcoin mining business. And so effectively, this company called Bitmine Immersion Technologies, we've seen obviously the price has gone up substantially since this announcement of Ethereum, of an Ethereum strategy. But this is also an indicator of where we are in the cycle, where just announcements of something that's going to happen is creating immense value. We've been seeing this happening with all the Bitcoin treasury companies. And as I've been explaining on the channel, it's just a matter of time before Wall Street turns their attention to Ethereum. Everybody thinks it's going to be Solana and the Solana ETFs. I actually think that that's going to bring the price of Solana significantly lower. But as Ethereum is the number one DeFi ecosystem, number one used ecosystem outside of Bitcoin, it's the number one in terms of cross-chain interoperability, most smart contracts, most usage, most new users, most layer 2 usage, most stablecoin integrations. I mean, I can keep going on and on. Wall Street hasn't really been paying attention to it. I mean, they have been doing a little bit of dabbling here and there with the ETFs. But this, I think, is the next phase of the cycle where we are going to see, now that Bitcoin treasury companies are, the cool new thing that everybody wants to invest in, and Circle, the stablecoin company. Now we're going to see the transitions to Ethereum. And by the way, it's not just this company. I just did a story the other day where we covered Bit Digital completely re-strategizing what the company is going to be about, and they're actually winding down their Bitcoin mining operations and doubling down as an Ethereum treasury play, right? So what we've seen already in this cycle is a lot of Bitcoin mining companies have transitioned to AI, or at least started transitioning some of their business to AI, because what you guys have to understand about Bitcoin mining is it is somewhat profitable in bull markets, but you have to constantly keep buying newer machines, better machines, and reinvesting in the business. Otherwise, you have other Bitcoin mining companies that will buy those new machines and mine more Bitcoin, and then they do better than you. And so it's very hard to stay ahead as a Bitcoin mining company, right? And so what we've seen is a lot of them have started to pivot at least some of their operations towards the AI realm, because the infrastructure that's needed for AI servers and AI processing is fairly similar to what you need for Bitcoin mining, so that these mining companies can make money during bear markets, during downturns, during network difficulty, etc. But now they're looking at it and saying, like, we didn't make the pivot to AI. To make the pivot to AI, it's going to do a lot. What can we do that's quick, easy, and is going to kind of put us up front? And that's really going for the next best thing, which is Ethereum, and making Ethereum strategy the company. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of these Bitcoin mining companies also have to look at the fact is, like, if they just mine Bitcoin, like I said, it becomes ever increasingly more difficult and more costly to run the operation. But with Ethereum, you need a node, and now you can also get Ethereum staking, because now Ethereum staking is not considered a security, as many people already knew, but the previous SEC said that everything having to do with crypto would be a security, and therefore you can't do it. And so these companies are looking at the cost benefits of continuing their Bitcoin mining business or strategically pivoting. And I think what we're seeing is now the major pivot into Ethereum. And this, again, is going to draw a lot of the money out away from Bitcoin and start putting it into Ethereum. And so let's understand what exactly Tom Lee is doing here. This is a video from the day that this announcement came out. And this is very interesting, not just for the company that he's talking about, BitMine Immersion Technologies, but also for the narrative around Bitcoin, the narrative around Ethereum, and potentially even the narrative around other altcoins. And so let's listen to what Tom Lee says here, and make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. That way you never miss a new video. Sometimes we do macro kind of news like this, and sometimes we do deep dives into individual cryptocurrencies to understand whether they're good investments or not. Let's listen to Tom Lee.
Underneath the stablecoin industry is Ethereum. That is really like the backbone and architecture of stablecoins. So it's important to create a project that essentially accumulates Ethereum to essentially protect and have some influence on the network. So that's why we're creating this treasury vehicle to buy Ethereum. The more Ethereum that's accumulated, the more secure the network is. And I think it's also sort of the architecture that future banks will have. You know, when Goldman issues a stablecoin and JP Morgan doing it on Ethereum, as a layer one blockchain, they're going to want to secure it by staking Ethereum. So we're trying to get in front of that by creating a treasury.
And so a few things to take from this. One, Tom Lee has a viewpoint on stable coins. And by the way, we're going to go through a tweet thread from Tom Lee about stable coins in just a minute here. But before we go there, I want you guys to see what Ryan from Bankless said about this. He said the Ethereum thesis for Tom Lee is simple. He's front-running Ethereum accumulation by the banks. He said Ethereum is also the architecture that future banks will have. When Goldman issues a stablecoin and JP Morgan is doing it on Ethereum as layer one blockchain, they're going to want to secure it by staking Ethereum. So we're trying to get in front of that by creating an Ethereum treasury vehicle. Why is Tom Lee converting a Bitcoin mining company to an ETH treasury and staking company? Simple. The banks will have stable coins. The stable coins will deploy on Ethereum, and so the banks will acquire and stake Ethereum to secure those stable coins. First, commercial banks will buy and stake, then central banks buy and stake Ethereum. Ethereum becomes the world reserve asset. He's front-running the obvious Ethereum accumulation trend, just as he did with Bitcoin many years ago. Now, I don't know if Ethereum is going to become a world reserve asset, but what Ryan is saying here is true, and what we just heard from Tom Lee is clearly the path. He's front-running the banks. The banks are going to use stable coins. They already are using stable coins. They're going to further use stable coins. And so what are they going to want to do? They're going to want to make sure those stable coins are protected. And so they're going to go and actually stake on the network. Shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, most of the major technology companies are already validating many of these major blockchains that we see here. And so let's understand a little bit more about what Tom Lee thinks about stablecoins, because he posted this just a few days before we heard about this announcement. He said stablecoin is the single most successful crypto product and the only one to move into the real world with $250 billion of assets. We are in the earliest days. He continues saying stablecoins are a good business model and attracted the interest of banks, JP Morgan, and V, I don't know which one that is, and even merchants like Amazon and Walmart. Issuers of stablecoins generate significant profit as the collateral US dollars can earn yield, and that is not paid to holders of the stablecoin, at least not yet. He says merchants like stable coins, but there is a lower because there's a lower transaction cost, and the merchants do not take the continuous loss from chargebacks, which can run as high as 5 to 6% of transaction volume. And a bonus is a large untapped market of users who do not use credit cards. Right? A lot of the younger generation do not. They just pay for everything debit. He says, in fact, 80% of stablecoin USD volume is outside the United States. Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan are nearly 40% of the stablecoin volume. In some nations, Tether trades above $1 because of the high demand. Even real estate transactions are paid with stablecoins. He continues saying the US government realizes stablecoins equal two structural benefits. First, US dollar dominance surges in stablecoin and crypto. And the more assets move to the blockchain, the greater the demand for stablecoins, meaning greater dollar dominance. The second benefit to the US dollar is that stablecoins collectively now are the 12th largest holder of US treasuries. Tether owns more treasuries than Germany. I mean, really think about that, right? US treasuries, which are dollar denominated assets that run the financial system, Tether owns more than one of the biggest allies of the US. And I would imagine this will continue to grow if stablecoins continue to grow usage, which they are. He said, looking ahead, stablecoins are the front end of the convergence of financial services and crypto. The next generation may prefer to their bank to be crypto-friendly companies like Robinhood, Circle, Coinbase, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. I don't know about the last two. But anyway, hence, as banks are likely to add crypto to their balance sheet, Bitcoin and Ethereum for staking, treasury stocks equal the backbone of future finance. In the future, banks, credit card issuers, and businesses will likely hold crypto on the balance sheet as working capital. Thus, the pure play treasury companies like MicroStrategy, Semler Scientific, SharpLink, the ones that we just talked about, these arguably represent the high margin component of future bank and financial institutional architecture. These Ethereum and Solana treasury stocks earn yield from staking, which is a positive feature. And by the way, right now, these companies are buying all this crypto up, right? But this is, again, to front run the banks, to front run the other corporations. But what do they plan on doing with it? I don't think they necessarily plan on doing anything with it right now. But again, if you know the banks are going to use it in the future and you're holding the coins that the bank wants, you become the bank. You become the new bank. And so that could happen through acquisition of these companies, right? Tom Lee can grow this to be the biggest Ethereum treasury company in the world. And then maybe a bank will acquire it at some point in the future. Or maybe they become a bank, right? Or maybe it's just the future of what a bank is. And they don't have to be called bank, right? Because they're just dealing with crypto. Maybe they loan the crypto to the bank to utilize, to help secure the network, but they actually still own it. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to buy something and then at some point you want to sell it or utilize it for the wealth that you created. And so, yeah, they're front running. They're creating what the banks are going to want. They're creating what the Robinhoods of the world are going to want. And because it's a publicly traded company, all it takes is a little bit of money. And then they say, hey, we want to buy this. Maybe MicroStrategy will say, you know what, Tom Lee, we're going to buy your entire company in cash for double what it's worth or whatever the situation is. And so Tom Lee continues saying this is positive for the layer one blockchains issuing stable coins. Why? Well, the majority of stablecoins are minted on Ethereum. Most of the real-world assets in crypto are on Ethereum, such as stablecoins, tokenized equities, and tokenized real estate. He posts some charts to show that as well. Stablecoin fees are 30% of Ethereum network fees today. The Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, recently said over $2 trillion of US dollar market for stablecoins is reasonable. $2 trillion. Right now, we're at maybe about $100, $200 billion. This is a 10x exponential growth in network fees for Ethereum. Other nations may mint stablecoins, equaling even more upside. And again, this was before Tom Lee was announced to be the chairman of the board. And so this is a clear indicator of what he's trying to do, of how he views this market and what this means for Ethereum. Again, when we look at the actual stock, the stock went up, I mean, substantially. It's 10x. It's a 5x right now, from $4 to $20. So a 5x, just based on the announcement that they're going to be purchasing the Ethereum. But keep in mind, like if you actually pull up the SEC, this is from the SEC documentation. This was what was filed with the SEC. This is their Ethereum Treasury Opportunity presentation. But they also talk about that they raised money and created shares of the company for the money that they raised, right? They get money, they issue shares. And so I don't know that the value of the company is worth $23. But again, we are seeing with companies like this that they're just skyrocketing. Circle went 10x and went from $30 IPO to $30 IPO to $300, and it's just a stable coin. So there's a lot of craze going on right now, and I think that this probably is going to go up much, much higher in the valuation. But let's understand what they're saying in their actual presentation. So you can see the key considerations were to bring the 1.1x MNAV, $500 million of shares authorized. Sorry, 500 million shares are authorized. Remember, these shares are dilution of the shares that are currently on the market. But they're going to do this to raise money the same way that MicroStrategy is raising it. And again, if you're buying now, and Ethereum doubles, triples, quadruples, think about what's going to be, where the stock is going to be. To me, it seems like this stock are pricing these things in. You can see right here, they're going to be doing an offering, a private placement of common shares, $200 million with, and basically they are issuing the shares to the people who are giving them the money. And then they're taking the money and then they're going to buy Ethereum with it. So the Ethereum goes on the balance sheet, but the shares on the open market, the reason the stock goes up this high is because people are like, oh, well, they're going to buy $200 million in Ethereum, but the market cap's only 142 million right now, so it should be higher, which is true. But you're also not accounting that this market cap hasn't yet taken into account the new shares that were issued for that debt. And so if you don't understand what I just said, rewind and listen to this part again, because this is really how this operates. This is why personally I'm not like jumping in to buy at these elevated prices just yet, because I want to see what the actual valuation is and where the valuation of Ethereum goes. But I think long term this is definitely going to be a very interesting play. But again, you also have to keep in mind, the more treasury companies we have for Bitcoin and or Ethereum, the less volatile they will be from a price perspective. You can see that with MicroStrategy is a perfect example. When MicroStrategy first started, up only was the only direction that we could see because it was the only one. They were the only company buying Bitcoin like that. Now that there's a lot of them, the price doesn't move that in that direction and that rapidly anymore. Anyway, in their presentation, they said they aim to create the premier destination for Ethereum and Ethereum-backed crypto investors in the public markets, pursue intelligent acquisition of Ethereum and hold it safely and securely, increase per-share holdings over time through accretive capital market transactions and proof-of-stake rewards, and generate long-term shareholder value by consistently delivering on the mission. They say they're different because of this, whatever. Here's their executives and board of directors. Obviously, chairman of the board, Tom Lee. Some of their other people, a former managing director at JP Morgan, former chief financial officer at CoinMint, 28 years experience managing director of fixed income at First Foundation Advisors, and formerly the chief financial officer at CleanSpark, one of the other Bitcoin mining companies. Very interesting. Top tier custody, staking, and rail partners. They're going to be partnering with Falcon X, Kraken, and Galaxy. It looks like BitGo and Fidelity Digital Assets as well. And then basically this is how they're going to have the treasury. They'll talk a little bit about the opportunity. I mean, it's basically almost going to be the same thing as the MicroStrategy play, right? Higher stock price. Well, you start here with the network. Drive multi-channel awareness of the company and Ethereum ecosystem to drive premium to the NAV. Then strategic issuance, the ability to issue equity, more shares, and debt at accretive levels to fund additional accumulation. Same thing that MicroStrategy is doing. When the stock price goes up, they sell some of the stock on the open market, get more cash, buy more Bitcoin. Price of Bitcoin goes up, then the stock price goes up, then they sell more stock on the open market, take the Bitcoin, take the dollars, buy the Bitcoin, then the Bitcoin price goes up, then MicroStrategy goes up, and they keep doing this. This is what they're literally calling it in SEC documents, the flywheel. Then yield generation, compound treasury assets through staking, DeFi, and derivatives to further increase the Ethereum per share. So if you're earning 5% on staking rewards, buying more with it, right? And then a higher stock price. So higher stock price, you buy more, you can create more debt, issue more shares, create more yield, get more Ethereum, the price goes up, you get more staking yield, you buy more, and it just keeps going on and on and on until it doesn't, right? There could be an end time frame if we go into a bear market, if the company doesn't do well, if they can't get their hands on more debt. Now, I want you guys to also keep in mind, right, the debt that is being created here can work in a bull market. But if we go into a bear market, if the Federal Reserve cuts rates by a lot, right, then it's just easier to get cash. And so people don't want to provide the debt, right, if they can just get the cash themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out if we enter a bear market let me rephrase. If the general market has rate cuts, how is that going to impact all of the markets? It's something we really have to think about. Because what Tom Lee is doing here, it's not just BitMine, right? We also know SharpLink, which is Joseph Lubin's company, Consensus. They're also becoming an Ethereum treasury company as well. And they're potentially going to be using leverage. Now, personally, I think that a lot of these companies, they're doing this very, very late in the cycle. They should have done this last year. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a different time frame for certain cryptos, right? I've been saying that we are probably at the top of the market potentially for Bitcoin. But the thing is, Ethereum and many altcoins have underperformed what most people think or haven't even reached their all-time record highs, which is not guaranteed. But this is an opportunity. And as we've predicted on this channel, once the Bitcoin play is over, people are going to be looking for the next best thing, and that's going to be Ethereum. And then the next best thing after that is really up for debate, whether it's XRP or Solana or Tron or Cardano or Dogecoin. But because we're so close to the end of the cycle, the 4-year cycle at least, right? We're getting towards the middle of it. And when you get towards the middle of it, we start to get towards, preparing for the bull market then. And so the fact that Ethereum has not performed and that the Bitcoin play is starting to kind of show some weakness, we're probably going to see some rotation, which we haven't yet seen. But as I've been predicting on this channel, the Ethereum rotation may actually be underway. Meanwhile, we're also hearing Robinhood is launching tokenized stock and perpetual futures trading in Europe. And by the way, Coinbase is going to be launching perpetual futures in the end of July of 2025 as well for U.S. citizens and the U.S. market. And this is very interesting because, as I've explained, perpetual futures is a lot of the reason some coins didn't reach their all-time high in the previous cycle, and also how the market cratered. Because once you start creating all these derivatives, especially at all-time record highs for most coins, what do you think that people are going to do? They're just going to keep bidding it up? No, they're going to go the opposite direction and they're going to short it. And this is where you have short squeezes, which could push the price up much, much higher very, very rapidly, and then major crashes. And so this is playing out, right? We're seeing it happen right now. Bit Digital lost value when they made the announcement. Bit Digital, I think, is BTBT. Yeah. And you can see the announcement occurred over here, $2.80, 25% was just cut immediately when they said they're pivoting to Ethereum. And in the 1 year chart, people could say, well, Cryptoviser, they were stupid for going from Bitcoin mining to Ethereum. But it's not actually stupid, because if you look at their price action over the last year, BitDigital barely had any movement. In fact, most of the movement was to the downside, as we've seen with many of the Bitcoin mining companies. And so if we understand that and we see that BitDigital has not even gotten close to recovery from the previous cycle, maybe it was overvalued, but right now we're still at under $1 billion valuation for an entire Bitcoin mining company that has been underperforming for a year. And so they didn't make the pivot to AI. So what else do they have? Well, the pivot to Ethereum, and that's what they're doing. It is interesting, and I think that over the course of time, they're going to do just fine, because people got really bullish over Ethereum in 2025, the first half, because Ethereum didn't hit all-time record highs. It wasn't correlated with Bitcoin. But now, those are the signals to buy, right? Because Wall Street, they're going to get involved in Ethereum. Sooner or later, they're going to. And this is where Tom Lee is playing that game. He's like, people want to be bearish on Ethereum? Fine. We're going to do what we can do to actually benefit from it. And not only just benefit from holding the coins, but benefit from staking the coins. And so it's a very interesting concept to see that he's front-running Wall Street, but he is Wall Street. So he's front-running the bigger players on Wall Street, right? There's very few opportunities that people like you and I have in the market to front-run Wall Street. We did it before the ETFs with Bitcoin. Now people are really looking at altcoins. We're looking for the AI realm, right? Because most people who are even invested in just regular AI, like OpenAI or whatever, they still have no idea what Internet Computer or Hedera are possible, what they're capable of from an AI perspective, and utilizing on-chain compute for artificial intelligence. Imagine what happens when they start to realize. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to start hoarding ICP and hoarding HBAR, or at least utilizing the technology and investing in it. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Meanwhile, we're hearing on the Bitcoin front, this guy Gary Stevenson claims that Satoshi is secretly dumping Bitcoin to fund a PR campaign designed to pump the price. Okay. So we're going to listen to this, and I want you guys to hear it, because one of the questions that we keep getting on this channel is, and just seeing on social media in general as well, is, well, if all these people are buying, why is the price not moving? And it's like, well, if somebody's buying and the price isn't moving, clearly people are selling, right? Like, yeah, people are selling. And so now the question is, well, who's selling? And then people think that Satoshi is secretly dumping. Let's listen to what he says. And by the way, don't forget to give this video a free thumbs up. Also, hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss a new video we upload every single day of the year to bring you the latest happening in the financial world. Let's listen to Gary Stevenson.
No, you know what? I'm going to finally address this, all right? This is what I want to say about this, right? Imagine you are fucking Satoshi Nakamoto, who is a fake guy who invented a fake currency and is owning like $1 trillion worth, all right? If I was this guy and I have $1 trillion of Bitcoin, and I know if I start selling it, the price will fall to zero, what I'm going to do is sell fucking 100 grand's worth of it, use that money to buy advertising, and then I'm going to sell 200 grand and use that money to buy advertising, and I'm going to work really, really fucking hard to buy a lot of fucking advertising so that all of the world's most naive young men are owning this useless shit, and I get all their fucking money. Listen, it's a scam. Look at what Donald Trump did. He comes in, here's a coin, you give me $50 billion fucking dollars, you fucking idiots. Don't fucking buy it.
Okay, so let's break it down. First of all, this is kind of like end stages of the market where people are saying, well, like they missed the whole cycle. Bitcoin's a scam. Bitcoin's not real money, all of this. The idea here is that, yes, as somebody's buying, somebody is selling, right? Is it Satoshi? Who knows? I mean, I don't know. But the deal here is, like, if you look at MicroStrategy, the part of what he's saying is accurate, right? Because MicroStrategy, even if you just look at recently, the executives have been selling their shares of the stock last year in 2023 into 2024. Michael Saylor sold all of his stock in the company. People see that he has 20 million shares now, and they're like, he didn't sell his shares. It's like, no, he did. He just got 20 million more shares. And what do you think he's going to do with those? He's going to sell them to go buy Bitcoin, to pump the price of Bitcoin. Then he's going to sell more of his shares in the stock to buy Bitcoin, right? So whenever somebody's buying, somebody is selling. But this idea that there's this big thing to just take your money, if you understand how these market cycles operate, you will be able to lock in profits. There's a lot of people who are not locking in profits and are not going to lock in profits because they think that we're never going to go into a bear market. We're never going to correct. And those people are going to lose, right? The people who are buying right now Bitcoin at all-time record highs and are the most bullish they've ever been. They're dumping their whole bank account in. They're selling their real estate to buy Bitcoin at all-time record highs. They're completely missing the conversation about this play is over. Like, it's over. People want more returns, and they're seeing they're not going to get those returns in Bitcoin. And when people start exiting, think about it, right? When people start exiting, there's chaos, and it's very hard to get out when everybody's trying to run for the door at the same time. This is where you need to be able to identify. We're starting to see weakness in Bitcoin. We're starting to see the narrative in Ethereum picking up. And by the way, I've been posting about this for weeks now. So if there's people who come on the channel, they're like, no, Cryptoviser, you're just absolutely incorrect. Yeah, you're so wrong on Bitcoin. Meanwhile, they're not listening to the conversation. Well, Cryptoviser, how could we be going into a bear market if we're hitting new all-time highs and we're getting all that? It's like you're missing the whole point of the video, right? The point of these videos, the point of this conversation is to tell you, like, to front run, you need to think ahead. And so while everybody's bullish, you need to say, okay, you know what? This trade is kind of weakening. Now I need to go into something else, whether it's dollars and you wait, whether it's Ethereum, whether it's Solana, XRP. Obviously, that's up to you. But there will be movement and there will be rotation in the markets. Maybe it won't stay in crypto. Maybe it'll go to stocks. Maybe it'll go to the Bitcoin mining companies. Maybe it'll go to the Ethereum treasury companies. I don't know. But guys, the market is already moving. It just may not be moving in the way that you want or to your portfolio. This is where you have to constantly change your perspective of the market to understand where this is all going. You know, if we were at the beginning of 2025 and people were excited about Invesco, Galaxy files for a Solana ETF, and now 9 issuers are in the race. Everybody's trying to get this ETF approved, and it probably will be approved and probably will be approved with staking as well, which is a better benefit to these companies. But again, like, is this going to be enough, push in the market to keep everything elevated and to keep everything trucking along? I personally don't think so, because as we've talked about in the beginning part of this video, all of the focus is on Ethereum now. The same way that most of this cycle, all the focus was on Bitcoin, now it's on Ethereum. But people who are invested in Bitcoin, they can't see it because they're Bitcoin, it's Michael Saylor, it's MicroStrategy, and they just miss it. It's really, really sad. It's really sad because, listen, everybody has their own opinion. Everybody has their own analysis of the market. And I am not saying I'm right on everything. I'm very open to being incorrect. But when I see what Tom Lee is doing and I look at his calls on the market over the last 4 years, he has been very accurate. More right than wrong. I don't expect him to be right all the time. I would actually think something's wrong if he was correct all the time. I want him to be wrong because I want to know where if he's wrong about Ethereum's rotation from Bitcoin, I want to understand why he was wrong about that. But I do agree with his thesis that right now, we are still in the nobody cares about Ethereum. It's still about Solana. I'm still hearing, no, Cryptoviser, it's SWI. SWI is the best coin. SWI is the best coin, Cryptoviser. It's not Ethereum. And I'm like, based on what? Based on one billionaire who's going to dump all of his coins on you in that coin? There's nobody using it. Wall Street is not interested at all, period. But Cryptoviser, Hyperliquid, is going to pass everything. Cardano has better technology. Guys, nobody gives a shit about those coins, period. You may, Wall Street doesn't. They're going to be interested in Ethereum, Circle, USDC, and maybe Solana this cycle, right? All the rest, that's next cycle. And by next cycle, the coins that we're talking about today may be completely irrelevant. Like, quite literally. Like, the possibility of SWE being around and being a top contender in very, very unlikely. Highly, highly unlikely. Cardano, same situation. Hyperliquid, same situation. Like, we are now in where Wall Street is in control. I told my viewers this from day one. I said, when Coinbase went public, I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Because typically when companies go public, the level of the company diminishes. But Coinbase has done a pretty good job so far, I think, over the last few years since they went public. But, here's the deal. These companies that are buying into crypto, they're buying Bitcoin. That's it. Now we're starting to see the dabbling into Ethereum. That's it. So the rest of these coins, yeah, we may get ETFs and all of this. We have a few companies that are buying Solana as well, like from a treasury perspective. But this is really it. As time goes on, people are going to be anticipating more companies doing this, more corporations making announcements like this. But I actually think the more that we see, the less they're going to be. Okay, same thing we're seeing in the Bitcoin treasury realm, right? When Anthony Pompliano said that they're launching, I think his is called ProCap, which is going to be a stock merger company. ProCap. They may have already changed the name of it to, I thought it was called ProCap. Oh yeah, right here, ProCap Acquisition Corp. This is Anthony Pompliano's company. And when he made the announcement about this, I was like, oh yeah, that may be it. That may be it for the Bitcoin treasury companies. Because once you have a Bitcoin maximalist getting into the game at the top of the market, like quite literally at all-time record highs, huge, huge, huge top indicator. And so we're not just going to see a draining of all crypto. I mean, that may happen as well. But the smart money, they're looking where they can make more money. Bitcoin, the trade may be over or slowing down. They're like a smart Wall Street investor like Tom Lee. He may believe that Bitcoin is going to $1 million over the course of time, but he also understands that like the likelihood Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million before Ethereum goes to $7,500 or $10,000. I mean, it's more likely Ethereum is going to perform now that Bitcoin has already reached all-time record highs and is starting to show weakness. And so this is my viewpoint and how I kind of view this whole market. Because keep in mind, private credit powers $24 billion of tokenization market, and Ethereum is dominating this. Remember what we were talking about, right? Real world assets. This is a big part of the evolution of crypto and how blockchain is becoming more mainstream. But most of the private credit, most of the tokenization, most of this, on-chain world is on Ethereum. And so what Tom Lee is doing, what many investors are doing, is taking that and saying, yeah, this is the data. We're going to invest based on the data. Meanwhile, more indications were kind of close to the end. Arbitrum jumped 17% on speculation of a partnership with Robinhood. Speculation has been growing of a potential tie-up between Arbitrum and Robinhood after an X post. Robinhood posted on X that Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin, Robinhood crypto general manager, and the chief strategy officer at Off-Chain Labs would come together for a fireside chat. The chat would take place at a Robinhood Europe-hosted event in Cannes, France, which the firm markets as unveiling its biggest crypto announcements of the year. So the coin is moving based on a complete speculation of Vitalik going to a conference and talking. Okay. We're also seeing this. Solana treasury firm Upexi plans to tokenize public shares via superstates, opening bell. And so effectively, Upexi, which is a treasury company for Solana apparently, aims to offer investors round-the-clock trading and settlement, bolstering liquidity, broadening investor access and compatibility with DeFi tools by tokenizing its public equity. They also disclosed that they maintain 735,000 Solana holdings valued at around $105 million. And so again, we got Bitcoin on the balance sheets of companies, Ethereum on the balance sheets of companies, and Solana on the balance sheets of companies, and probably stable coins as well. But that's it. And definitely no XRP on the balance sheets. Ripple is eyeing multiple acquisitions and Ethereum-like upgrades to their XRP ledger blockchain. This came out, and again, this is the signal that we're towards the end of the market. There's not really, we haven't seen that much integration of Ripple or XRP. The specific thing that I'm more concerned about, Ripple, I think, is a good company, and I think that they're very solid. But I'm worried about XRP because we got a lot of people heavily invested in XRP. And any announcement Ripple makes, they're cheering on. But how does that positively impact XRP? Well, none of these acquisitions that I've read have any direct connection or correlation with XRP besides just speculation. So we'll see if these acquisitions actually do anything for the XRP price, or if it's all just hopes and prayers, right? And so we talked a little bit about the staking ETF for Ethereum and also for Solana. But I think the play is Ethereum, right? If we're going to see one of these coins go to $1 trillion in this cycle, it's going to be Ethereum versus Solana. Solana would have to 12x, where Ethereum would just have to really triple, a little bit more than triple in price, around that $75,000 to $8,000 range, and it's at $1 trillion. And that may be the level that we go to this cycle, and then people are going to ask, is Bitcoin going to pump higher than that? Because that would bring Bitcoin dominance down by quite a bit. I don't know. Could be a blow off top. Could be next cycle. I don't know. But taking your personal emotions out, where are we in the cycle on the psychological chart? Personally, I think that we're up here. I think that we're close to the complacency or in the complacency phase of the market, right at the top. That doesn't mean it's over. It just means we're at and very close to the top of the market. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's conversation. Let me know what you guys think about what Tom Lee is doing over here
underneath
with this company and making it an Ethereum treasury company and doing the MicroStrategy flywheel of issuing debt, issuing more shares, getting more money, buying more coins. How is this going to impact Ethereum? And the fact that this is probably not the only company that we're going to be seeing announcing this. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Ethereum price is impacted. I think it's actually going to be more impactful than the Bitcoin ETFs and the Bitcoin treasury companies. But we'll have to wait and see. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you don't miss any of the new videos that we post, including updates to this video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Crypto on.